coronavirus. And I must say, my morning started out a little bit surreal. I'm walking across the Capitol grounds to deliver a speech on the importance of helping out small business. And there's some cherry trees that are blossoming in between Russell Office Building and the Capitol. The sunlight was coming down, blue sky. There were several mothers and a bunch of young children, 3 and 4-year-old children. And it just seemed like such an idyllic, beautiful day. That was in massive contrast to the issues that awaited me inside the building, where we're dealing with 2 crises. We're dealing with infectious disease crisis and an accompanied economic crisis. The speed with which coronavirus is hammering the United States is pretty stunning. I was just asking my team for the latest numbers. I know these are changing hour to hour now, but for rough comparison, a week ago we had about 1,200 cases in the United States of affirmed positive coronavirus infections, and now we have over 7,000. So roughly a 6-fold increase in a single week. On the deaths, we went from about 38 deaths a week ago to well over 100 now, or a 3-fold increase in the number of fatalities. So this is clearly the beginning of a huge surge of medical peril, and our whole goal is to slow down the infection from one person to another. We aren't sure exactly how infectious this disease is, but experts have said it's roughly parallel to the common cold, and that we might anticipate under normal circumstances some 20 to 30% of the population might be infected by it. In terms of its mortality, we've seen estimates ranging from parallel to the common flu, about a 0.1% mortality, to being over 2% or 20 times as deadly as common flu. So the range of potential impact is enormous, and we cannot discount the potential upper end, which would make this just an enormous calamity across the country, not just in the individual deaths, which are horrible despite any particular disease causing it, but in overwhelming our healthcare system. In other words, we won't have enough protective equipment. We won't have enough respirators. We won't have enough ventilators in the hospital. And we'll be in the situation of Italy struggling to decide who gets help and who doesn't. That's what all the social distancing is about. Slow this down. It's going to move somewhat because it's just impossible to stop every possible case of transmission. But we have to come as close to stopping it as we can. And so disinfecting washing our hands, using the fluid on our hands, hand sanitizer, being wary of doorknobs, handshakes, close contact with others, large groups, all of the above. It's all about trying to flatten this curve and keep this from overwhelming our healthcare system. If the system is not overwhelmed, we'll get the medical attention to each individual case that we need. If it is overwhelmed, then we won't, and a lot more people will die. So we here in the Senate and in Congress have been working on 3 bills in response. The first bill, which passed about a week and a half ago, was focused on strengthening our healthcare system. Had some other things in it, but primarily think of it as strengthening the healthcare system, about $8.3 billion bill. The second bill has been passed by the House and will probably be passed by the Senate today. And that bill is focused on directly helping families impacted who there can be helped through sick leave, through unemployment insurance, through free testing, through strengthening our food distribution system. So just some core fundamentals. It is approximately a $100 billion bill. And then as soon as this passes, we'll be immersed in trying to compile a general stimulus bill This is probably going to be potentially in about $1 trillion bill. It seems like every few hours go by, it goes from $750 billion to $850 billion to $1 trillion. I'm not sure where we'll end up, but what we're looking at is a complete implosion of the economy. When you have so many people staying in place and not going out to restaurants, and restaurants being shut down to create social distance, when you have group gatherings at theaters and music events and athletic events all ending, we're just having a tremendous impact on the economy, and that ripples through small businesses in a huge number of ways. I've been receiving letters from small businesses ranging from fly fishing to restaurants to event planning groups, just all saying that their orders have collapsed. Their customers have collapsed in just a week's time. And we're just going to see that across this country. So this is going to be a large bill trying to help out. So as we think about that bill, there are two basic approaches. There is the approach that I believe is the right approach, which is to focus on families and small business. Help out people where the hurt is greatest. There will also be a lot of effort to say, well, here's another opportunity to give corporate tax breaks. Well, there may be some industries that are particularly impacted that we will need to help, that are essential to the economy, but this should be the workers first strategy. And any group, large group that's helped out, needs to make sure that they have a workers first set of policies, that they're not using public funds to do stock buybacks, they're not using it for bonuses, that they're using it to potentially keep essential services in place so our economy can recover. So one of the things I've really emphasized is we need to help people stay in their homes. We have a housing crisis across this country that's going to be aggravated by this recession. So I've been pushing hard to have government-backed loans, forbearance on mortgages. We just got good news about an hour ago that the federal government, Trump has agreed to do this. So I'm very pleased to say that is an important step. But we're going to need a lot more help for families and a lot more help for small businesses. That small business help may come in the form of loan forbearance on government-backed loans. It may come in the form of grants. It may come in the form of low-interest loans. We're collecting ideas on how best to help small businesses, and that will certainly be a significant portion of this bill to come. On the housing front, I have submitted a framework that is basically based on work that I've asked my team to do to lay out a massive increase in the investment in housing across this country before this crisis erupted. And it envisioned about a $40 to $50 billion investment per year over the next 10 years. And the outlines of this framework that I've submitted to Leadership for Inclusion is about a $43 billion investment in the year to come to strengthen our housing, keep people in their homes, not pile on to the homeless challenge and the financially distressed families in terms of being able to make rent and mortgage payments. So I think I will just stop there and invite your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, if you'd like to unmute yourself and jump in with questions, go ahead. Just note that I muted a couple of you because of background noise, so I'm unmuting all of you now. But go ahead and jump in with questions.
Here's a question from Marty.
Security and the commercials are on fire.
So that's KGW again. Go ahead. Go ahead, Marty.
Okay, question is, I've had some folks who are concerned about applying for an SBA loan. They've been told by the SBA that the county is not called a disaster area yet, and that's the only way that the SBA can distribute a loan. Could you maybe talk to that a little bit? Will there be some changes there, or how's that gonna work? Thank you.
I'm very sure there will be changes. Since we haven't passed the bill yet, we don't have legislation to change that. So they're operating on pre-crisis rules. That has to go through a very fast transition here. The actual details of how we address small business have to be worked out. I anticipate that we'll be staying in Washington until this is worked out and this is passed. That's certainly my belief, is that Mitch McConnell should not send the Senate home as he did for 3 days last weekend, when we should have been working on the second package, the one the House had passed and the Senate hadn't. I would like to follow up on that, and I'll have Jake on my team connect with you, Marty, to get the details, because those details are helpful to make sure we include language that drives the transition in the bill that we'll be crafting.
And I want to thank you for doing this call, and thanks for your leadership during this time, and our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you, Marty, as are all of ours, for folks across this country and across the world. I was told by a member of my team that the movie that is most being watched right now is the movie Contagion, which I have not watched, nor I don't think I could watch at this moment. But the word sums up the unexpected challenge we have to our society, and also it shines a light on our underinvestment in the health care infrastructure over this past decade or so. Two things that really should have happened way back early in February. One was an absolute investment in testing so that we have drive-up testing all across this country. The only way we can know exactly how the contagion or infection, the coronavirus, is spreading is to have people who have any symptom get tested and see if they have it. Not only does this help us understand what is happening, which informs public policy, but it also means that that individual knows that they need to take extremely seriously the self-quarantine, and they're on alert for more serious symptoms to be able to go to the medical system. And so that drive-up testing we haven't come close to. If we go back to March 8th, South Korea had tested about 4,000 citizens for every million, and we had tested 5 citizens per every million Americans, 5 versus 4,000. I was just getting numbers right before this call, and I think we're up around 40 citizens per every million, and South Korea is now at about 5,000 per every million. So they have a much fuller picture and a much better ability for individual citizens to know that they're affected and to be extraordinarily careful not to infect others.
I think some of the planning here in Oregon, Jeff, is that the governor wants to allocate hotels in case we need more beds. Do you know anything about that, or is that just the internet so far?
I don't have any insight on that. I know that in various states, governors have been looking at utilizing empty dorm rooms where colleges have shut down, utilizing hotels. Federally, I'm supporting the Defense Department, preparing for places where it makes sense to be able to build capacity, essentially emulating a little bit of what China did when they built a massive hospital in a week to be able to treat people that may be important in places where hotels or dorm rooms are simply not available or not appropriate.
Okay, and folks, I would ask you to please mute yourselves if you're not asking a question. Thank you.
Those are my questions. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Marty.
You can still do background noise, so please make sure you mute yourself if you're not asking a question, and you can go ahead with your question. Thank you.
Drew Allen from Portland Tribune, Pamphlet Media Group. Senator, you've already alluded to one of the failures of the 2009 stimulus package was not including enough relief to head off foreclosures. Are there any subjects such as the public health response, which was at least initially slowed because of budget cuts made that restrictions that that you can head off with passage of subsequent legislation to deal with coronavirus?
Well, Peter, we certainly have to make sure we have robust investment in the CDC. We have seen through SARS and through MERS and now COVID-19 that we are periodically going to have some virus. Of course, we have the Zika challenge here, well, was it a year and a half ago? It seems like ancient history now, but we know that in the size of the human population on this planet, we are going to have viruses that move either between populations of humans or that stem from an animal and make the leap into the human population, Ebola. We have to absolutely be prepared to respond immediately. So we need to have the infrastructure in place that on day one that we get an alert is looking closely at it, getting the DNA mapping, proceeding to figure out what kind of testing can be designed to quickly identify it in a patient, figure out the immediate ways to slow down the spread of it, and just have all that geared up and ready to go. We should never again be in a place where China announced this and in quick order gave the DNA structure, and essentially our American government, federal government, sat on its hands for weeks while the danger increased more and more. And the result of that is just far more people are going to get sick and far more people are going to die than if we had acted properly. But we've got to have that infrastructure ready and in place to have that command center that says, oh, here's a new threat. What is it? How do we map it? How do we test for it? How do we respond? Let's get to the president's desk right now and start the motion. And some things may not turn out to be a big risk, but others will. Every few years we're going to have one of these.
Thank you, Senator Merkley. This is Keaton Thomas with Page 2 News in Portland. We've heard the idea floated of sending cash payments to Americans. I'm curious if you think, A, that would be effective, and B, how quickly that money could get to folks in Oregon.
And by tax payments, are you referring to sending like $1,000 per adult across the country?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cash payments.
Cash payments, got it. Okay, thank you. So realize that a $1,000 cash payment is not very significant in comparison to unemployment insurance or paying for the health treatment for the disease or enabling people to forbear their mortgage during this crisis. One-time $1,000 check, that's partial rent payment for a lot of families, or a partial mortgage, certainly could be a valuable part of the overall package, but the package really has to focus on the significant impacts that will hit families, and unemployment, sick leave, unemployment insurance, sick leave, paying for medical treatment, medical tests. Those are much bigger factors. So I think it will probably be part of a package, but we need to keep in perspective that a one-time payment of $1,000 is not going to get us where we need to get to. It's not going to be, and it's not targeted for those who need it most. There's no reason we should be sending $1,000 to Warren Buffett or many others who are very affluent.
Senator Roberts from KOHC, KBSV event. We're getting calls from people, small business owners, who are questioning whether a stimulus package help is going to come to small businesses. Is that going to discriminate against businesses who are forced to shut down versus those who choose to for the safety of their own workers? Would that be a distinction made in those bills?
So it's a very good point, and I think the collective sense, and I've heard this from Republicans, from Democrats, bipartisan sense, is we want to help those businesses that are hit hard. And exactly how we're going to do that is to be worked out. But I take the point that a business that is shut down is shut down because of the economic impact, and others are going to be just barely open. Like we may be, well, let's take for example a restaurant that has to close its doors because it's ordered to do so, and it's the right thing for social distancing. but it's waiting to reopen. So the business is still alive, it's just kind of has to close temporarily. I think one reason I am collecting the stories of businesses across Oregon, and I want to thank the more than 40 businesses that responded to our request. And Jake Okenberg on my team, if people have more small business stories, I encourage them to send them to Jake. You can find Jake on my website. And
You all can just send them to me and I'll connect you.
Or send them to Sarah. And Sarah, when we close, you can again give how to contact you. I'm sure everybody knows. But anyway, the point is, in those stories will help us understand how to help businesses. Ones that are where businesses slowed way down, and businesses that are closed. I think we want to help the entire continuum.
Okay, and Senator, I have a question here from KGW. Nina is asking about Oregonians who are stuck abroad. For instance, a Portland woman who is quarantined inside a hostel in Peru and unable to leave her room. She's asking you.
Sarah, did we lose you?
Can you hear me?
You're cutting out.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Question from KGW about folks who are stuck abroad, Oregonians who are stuck abroad. What are you doing to help them?
Yes, we have folks who are stranded all around the world, including a group of Lewis and Clark students who are stranded. My casework team is trying to reach the ambassadors, both the ambassadors to this country, the ambassadors overseas, talk to the State Department desk officers, and say how can we work to get folks home. So we're tackling it with each individual case, because each country is going to have slightly different solutions to how we rectify the problem. So definitely call my casework team with the specifics. We'll have to get a disclosure request you have to fill out so we can call on your behalf, and we'll engage and try to get the information and see how we can assist in getting people back home.
Senator Merkley, this is Keaton Thomas again with K2. I've heard from various economists who have described what could be the recession that we're going to experience as being very different than anything we've experienced in the past. Are you guys thinking outside the box in DC in case our previous mechanisms of stalling or curbing the recession don't work?
Well, we're brainstorming. And one advantage of the legislative process is we can tackle the issues that we're hearing about, and then we're going to hear about others. Let me give you an example. I've talked to the presidents of both Oregon State and University of Oregon, who have pointed out that their next financial student quarter, they're on a quarter system, starts at the end of March. And they're anticipating a huge reduction in tuition because many students in the middle of this chaos and having to go to an online system will say, I'll just take a quarter off school. Well, their costs will not decrease in the same proportion. So our universities are going to face a real challenge. And as one of the university's presidents pointed out to me, there's not a lot of reserves in the system. So this is an issue I have raised with my Democratic leadership team to say we've got to find a way to help out our universities that are caught in this. We're going to learn more as this unfolds. It's just going to touch everyone. One of the letters I received was from a woman whose husband runs a fly fishing operation. And you might initially think that people who are laid off might say, I'll go fly fishing and maybe there'll be an increase in customers. No, not at all. That's not what is happening. There's a laser tag company that has been in existence more than 2 decades in Oregon. And the owner of that, again, you might think that maybe people would have children at home because school's been shut down. Maybe they're going to go to laser tag. The kids are separated. They got protective equipment on. Maybe that'll be a big increase in his business. No, people are absolutely not showing up because they're staying home, which is maybe the best thing. But my point is, this is going to touch our economy in ways we haven't fully comprehended, the ripples are going to go just about everywhere, and it means we're probably going to be having to look at bill after bill after bill as we try to adjust to a challenge we have never seen before. We've never seen something like this before.
Senator, John Rudolph, CPUSA. A question about producing supplies. How much leverage does the Senate have in putting the production of ventilators on what should be essentially a war footing, like we did the production of aircraft during the Second World War? Because we have an identified shortfall of probably 750,000 of these devices.
Yes, so there are a group of us who have encouraged the president to use the war, I won't say War Powers Act, that's not the right term, but it's an act that gives the ability of a president during emergencies to redirect manufacturing in the United States to address that emergency. And this is a moment that demands this. This, along with the testing, if I go back to early February, that is when we should have started to say, is it possible we will need a lot more protective equipment? Is it possible we'll need a lot more medical equipment? And how are we going to get that? What is in our strategic reserve? What is the high end of what we might need? How are we going to gear up production? What can existing producers do? How much of this is imported with those supply chains that might be interrupted? Therefore, how much do we need to gear up production here in the United States?
Thank you very much.
I'm just enormously frustrated that those conversations are a month and a half late in happening, but that power exists, and we should be using it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, folks, we are at time. Are there any final questions?
Yeah, one quick one if I could, please.
Go ahead.
This is Roger Nichols at Gorge Country Media in the Dallas. I want to know if, Senator, they're taking special precautions in the meetings of the Senate and the House while you're there.
Roger, I was struck that as I walked outside on a second trip across to the Capitol for a vote here about an hour and a half ago, there were 4 senators talking in the parking lot, and all 4 of us were standing. We were like, each person as they arrived together, it was like, okay, are we 6 feet apart? And so it's very, very conscious, about doorknobs. Even on the floor, on the Republican side, there was a sign that remember, I think it said remember, social distance, so that those who are working at the desk do not have senators leaning over the top of them. People are really striving to modify their personal behavior, both directly to reduce the spread of any potential virus, but also to model that for the country. It's not just very long ago, a little over a week ago, I was at a gathering where folks were packed together, and a leader of the group was saying, I'm shaking hands, and he was shaking everyone's hands. You will not see that happening now, a week later. People have gotten the message that this is not just about you. This is not about you, just you not getting sick. This is about you transmitting disease that can affect so many people in America. And if we don't stop the transmission, we're going to overwhelm the healthcare system. We overwhelm the healthcare system. People don't get the medical treatment they need, and a lot more people are going to die. So that sense of the seriousness of the situation, the determination to modify our personal conduct, both in the use of our hands and the distance that we keep from others, and the type of meetings we hold, all of that is now in full gear here on Capitol Hill. Well, Sarah, are we wrapping up?
Yes, wrapping up. Thank you so much.
So
Thank you so much.
thank you everyone for covering this, because I think you all in the media can really help convey the seriousness of this. to Americans and to Oregonians and people in the community. And we need particularly to have everyone realize that even if you're young and very unlikely to have a serious case of the disease, the way you behave will affect the disease that others experience and will affect whether or not our healthcare system is overwhelmed. So thank you for helping to carry this message about the gravity of the situation. This is a moment when every American can contribute to a very important national project that will have an impact on millions and millions of people. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator,
you.
and thank you everyone for joining.
All right. Thank you, Senator.
Take care now.